It happened so fast. One moment I was working on my quarterly report. The next, I was being escorted out of the building. And then I heard her. That cackle. Kind of sound that digs into your bones and stays there. Sarah, from marketing. She laughed when I was fired. Not a polite little chuckle, but a full-blown head thrown back. Tears streaming down her face, absolutely unhinged cackle. My name is Alex. I was a senior project manager at Vertex Innovations. Or, I was a senior project manager. This morning, I was just Alex, a guy in a nice suit, walking into what I thought was another regular Monday. I had been at Vertex for 6 years. 6 years of late nights, skipped lunches, and pushing projects across the finish line. I loved my job. I really did. I believed in what we were doing, in the potential of our software, in the team I had built. My team, they were like family. Then came the email. A last-minute meeting with HR and the head of operations. My stomach did a little flip. Those kinds of meetings never mean anything good. I walked into the sterile HR conference room, the air conditioning blasting, just a little too cold. Mr. Harrison, the head of ops, sat across from Miss Jenkins from HR. Both of them had those grim, unreadable faces. Kind of faces that tell you your life is about to change. But not for the better. Alex, Mr. Harrison started, his voice flat. We need to talk about your performance. My heart hammered against my ribs. Performance? My last 2 projects were ahead of schedule and under budget. My team had just won the Internal Innovation Award. What performance were they talking about? There have been some concerns raised. Miss Jenkins chimed in, her voice equally devoid of emotion. Specifically, a pattern of insubordination and a failure to meet strategic objectives. Insubordination? Strategic objectives. This was completely out of left field. I stared at them, trying to process. I don't understand, I said, my voice coming out as a strained whisper. Can you be more specific? My recent reviews have been excellent. Mr. Harrison sighed, a put-upon sigh like I was wasting his time. Look, Alex, we appreciate your contributions over the years, but the company is moving in a new direction. We need leadership that aligns with our core values. And frankly, your approach has become an impediment. An impediment. To what? I felt a burning sensation behind my eyes. This wasn't about performance. This was something else, a setup, a hit job. But who and why? Effective immediately, Miss Jenkins continued. Your employment with Vertex Innovations is terminated. We'll have your severance package details sent to you. We'll need your company laptop, phone, and badge now. An HR representative will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. It was a blur after that. The words hung in the air, cold and final. Terminated. Fired. Just like that. 6 years of my life gone in a sentence. My mind raced, trying to find a reason, a justification. Was it the project I argued for? The one Mr. Harrison initially disliked, but later took credit for its success? Was it my directness in meetings, always speaking my mind instead of just nodding along? An HR junior, a young guy named Mark, stood by the door. He looked awkward, clearly uncomfortable with his role. He handed me a cardboard box. "If you could just put your personal items in here, Alex," he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I walked back to my desk, the usual buzz of the office suddenly sounding distant, muffled. My team members glanced up, some offering sympathetic smiles, others quickly looking away. I saw the whispers, the confused expressions. I felt like a ghost walking through my own life as it dissolved around me. I grabbed a few photos, my favorite coffee mug, a plant I'd nursed back to life. It didn't take long. My life at Vertex fit into one small box. As Mark led me towards the main lobby, the exit that felt like a gate to a different world, I heard it. The sound came from the marketing department, near the windows overlooking the city. A loud, piercing laugh. It wasn't just a laugh, it was a declaration, a victory cry. I turned my head. Sarah Miller. She was standing with a small group of her marketing colleagues, a hand over her mouth, but her eyes were bright, sparkling with what looked like pure glee. Her entire body shook with the force of her mirth. She caught my eye. For a split second, her laughter faltered, but then it returned, even louder, sharper. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Sarah and I had never really gotten along. She was always trying to take credit for things, to spin narratives that weren't quite true. We'd clashed on a few cross-departmental projects. I always thought it was just professional disagreement. Now, looking at her, seeing that unrestrained joy at my downfall, I knew it was personal. She hated me, and she was celebrating. The security guard held the door open. I walked through, feeling the cold gust of wind hit my face. The city outside, once a vibrant backdrop to my ambitions, now felt indifferent, mocking. I clutched the cardboard box, the weight of it feeling like a ton. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was probably a text from my mom, asking about my day. How was I going to tell her I was jobless? How was I going to tell anyone? I stood on the sidewalk, the sounds of traffic rushing by, the laughter still echoing in my ears. Sarah's laughter. It wasn't just the humiliation of being fired that cut deep. It was her reaction. That raw, unadulterated pleasure at my pain. It was a betrayal of basic human decency. And in that moment, standing there, homeless from the corporate world, a cold, hard resolve began to form in the pit of my stomach. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a different one. A story where the laugher would one day choke on her own words. The hours that followed my firing were a blur of numb shock. I walked for what felt like miles, just wandering aimlessly through the city. The sun, which had felt so bright and full of promise that morning, now seemed to mock me, casting long, lonely shadows. My phone kept buzzing, but I ignored it. I couldn't bring myself to talk to anyone. My mind was a chaotic mess of anger, disbelief, and a creeping, icy fear. How was I going to pay rent? My savings weren't huge. I had just put down a deposit on a new apartment, a slightly bigger place I could finally afford after years of steady raises at Vertex. Now that dream felt like a cruel joke. What about my student loans? My car payment? Suddenly, every single financial obligation I had felt like a crushing weight. I ended up in a small, quiet park, sitting on a cold metal bench. The sounds of children laughing on a nearby playground only made me feel more alone. Their carefree joy was such a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Sarah's laughter. It kept replaying in my head. A vicious loop. It wasn't just her being happy I was gone. It was like she knew something. Like she had a part in it. The thought festered, growing into a burning suspicion. By late afternoon, the initial shock gave way to a wave of despair. I felt utterly defeated. 6 years of hard work, loyalty and dedication, just tossed aside like trash. What was I supposed to do now? Start over? At 32, the idea of going back to square one was terrifying. I had built a reputation, a network. All of it felt worthless now. I finally called my best friend Mike. He answered on the first ring, probably worried, after I hadn't replied to his texts. "Dude, where are you? You okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I tried to speak, but my throat was tight. "I got fired." I choked out, the words tasting bitter. There was a pause on the other end. "What? No way. Alex, what happened?" "Vertex. But you are like their poster boy for success." I recounted the bare facts of the meeting, the vague accusations, the swift termination. I didn't even have to mention Sarah's laughter. My voice probably conveyed enough of the raw pain. Mike was furious. "That's insane. T-year is no way you deserve that. It's gotta be a setup. You've always been too good, too honest for that corporate snake pit." His words, though comforting, also stung. Too honest. Was that my downfall? Did I speak too much truth? Was that what Mr. Harrison meant by impediment? Mike offered to come over to bring pizza and beer to just sit with me. But I couldn't face anyone yet. Not even him. I needed to be alone with my despair, to let it wash over me before I could even think about fighting back. "Thanks, man. But I just need some space right now. I'll call you tomorrow." I finally dragged myself home as the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. My small apartment felt cold and empty. I sat on my couch staring at the wall, the silence deafening. Then my mum called. I almost didn't answer, but I knew she'd worry. "Hi, honey, how was your day?" Her voice was bright, cheerful. My heart ached. I couldn't lie to her. She had sacrificed so much for me to get through college, to have this career. "Mom," I began, my voice cracking, "I have some bad news." I explained it as calmly as I could, omitting the part about Sarah. She listened patiently. Then there was a long silence. "Oh, Alex. Oh, my poor boy," she finally said, her voice soft with sympathy. "Are you all right? What are you going to do?" Her concern, her simple kindness, was almost too much. I felt a fresh wave of tears well up. "I don't know, Mom. I honestly don't know." She tried to be reassuring, telling me I was talented. I'd find something else. But her words felt hollow. The world outside felt hostile. Corporate ladder I had been so diligently climbing had just been kicked out from under me. As the night wore on, the despair began to harden into something else. Something cold and sharp. Fury. It wasn't just about being fired anymore. It was about the injustice. It was about Sarah's laughter. That pure, unadulterated malice. It was about Mr. Harrison's smug, dismissive face. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. But as I sat there in the darkness of my apartment, a flicker of something else ignited within me. A memory. Project I had been working on in secret. In my spare time for the past 2 years. A dream I had put on the back burner, telling myself I needed the stability of my job at Vertex. It was a completely different kind of software. something I truly believed could revolutionize an entire industry. I had poured my heart and soul, and a significant chunk of my limited savings into it. I had even quietly incorporated a small LLC, just in case. I hadn't touched it in months, feeling too swamped with my Vertex responsibilities. But now, the thought of it filled me with a strange sense of purpose. It was a wild, long shot. It was nothing, but it was mine, and it was completely outside their control. As the first rays of dawn crept through my window, painting the room in a dull gray, I got up. The despair was still there, a dull ache, but the fury was sharper, clearer, and alongside it, a tiny, almost imperceptible spark of hope. A crazy, desperate, improbable hope. This wasn't the end. This was a new beginning. A beginning fueled by a desire for something more than just getting by. It was fueled by the memory of Sarah's laughter and a burning need to prove them all wrong. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a heavy heart. But that tiny spark from the night before was still there. It wasn't hope in the usual sense, more like a desperate clinging to a lifeline. I made coffee, the mundane act of small comfort. Then I pulled out my old personal laptop, the one I used for everything outside of Vertex. For the past 2 years, almost every evening and weekend, I had been working on something completely separate from my job. It was a passion project, a dream I'd harbored since college. I called it Nexus. It was an AI-driven platform designed to optimize supply chain logistics for small to medium businesses, something the big players weren't really focusing on. I saw a huge gap in the market. Yacht was all about consumer-facing apps, flash and sizzle. Nexus was about efficiency and real-world impact. I had started it purely as an intellectual exercise, a challenge to myself. Could I really build something from scratch? I taught myself new programming languages, delved into machine learning algorithms, and spent countless hours researching global supply chains. The initial prototype was rough, just a proof of concept, but I genuinely believed it had potential. The reason it was a secret was simple. Vertex had a notoriously strict non-compete clause. Any intellectual property developed during my employment, even on my own time, could potentially be claimed by them if it related to their field. While Nexus was technically in a different sector, the overlap in software and optimization was enough to make me paranoid. I didn't want them getting their hands on my baby. So I worked in silence, telling no one, not even Mike, about the full scope of what I was doing. He knew I was tinkering, but not the extent. I had even managed to secure a small seed investment 6 months ago from a family friend of a college acquaintance, Dr. Anya Sharma. She was a venture capitalist, very discerning, but she saw the vision. She believed in me. That tiny investment had allowed me to incorporate Nexus Solutions LLC and hire a freelance data scientist part-time to help refine the algorithms. We had been making slow, steady progress. We were still far from a finished product, let alone a market-ready one, but the core technology was solid. My plan had always been to save up, maybe work another 5 years at Vertex, and then take a sabbatical to fully commit to Nexus. This firing just ripped the timeline to shreds. Now, Nexus wasn't a side project anymore. It was my only project, my only hope. I opened the code, the familiar lines of text accompanied. It felt good to be back, to dive into something I truly owned. I spent the whole day immersed in it, debugging, refining, adding new features. The despair of yesterday was replaced by a strange focus, a desperate energy. Thought of Sarah, of Mr. Harrison, of the humiliation still burned, but it also fueled me. I would make Nexus a success. I had to. Not just for myself, but to show them, to show her. As the sun set again, I stretched, my muscles aching, my eyes tired. But my mind was buzzing with possibilities. I had a rough estimate of how much more funding I'd need to actually launch Nexus. It was a lot. Too much, probably. But Anya, Dr. Sharma, she was the key. She had promised to connect me with her network if the prototype showed significant promise. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment to pivot. My life had just taken a sharp, unexpected turn. I had to embrace it, or be crushed by it. I sent Dr. Sharma an email. It was short to the point. I explained my current situation, my sudden availability, and my renewed focus on Nexus. I attached the latest demo video and the updated business plan. I emphasized the progress we'd made and reiterated my conviction in the platform's potential. I ended with a clear request. I needed more funding and I needed serious connections. Then I hit send. It felt like sending a message in a bottle out to sea, a desperate plea. The odds felt astronomical. But what else did I have? For the next few days I lived and breathed Nexus. I barely slept. I ate quick, cheap meals. My apartment became my office, my entire world shrinking to the glow of my laptop screen. I reconnected with my freelance data scientist, pushed him for more hours. I worked like a man possessed, driven by fear, by anger, and by that stubborn, tiny spark of belief. A day later, Dr. Sharma replied. Her email was calm, professional. Alex, it read, I am sorry to hear about Vertex. However, your renewed focus on Nexus is indeed timely. The progress is impressive. I have a meeting next week with a consortium of investors who are very interested in innovative solutions for logistics. I believe Nexus would be an excellent fit. Can you be ready to present a full pitch by then? It would be a significant opportunity. My heart leaped. A consortium of investors. Significant opportunity. This was it. This was my shot. I typed back an immediate, enthusiastic yes, absolutely. I'll be ready. I'll be ready. The weight of debt, the sting of being fired, the memory of Sarah's laughter. They were still there, like a dull ache. But now, they were not paralyzing me. They were pushing me, elting me towards a future I hadn't dared to fully pursue. Not while I was comfortably nestled in the corporate nest. It was terrifying, exhilarating, and completely, utterly uncertain. But at least now, I was moving. And for the first time since Monday, I felt like I was in control of something. My own destiny, perhaps. Even if it was just a fragile, fledgling one. The next week was a blur of frantic preparation. I fine-tuned my pitch deck, practiced my presentation until my voice was hoarse, and ensured every line of code in the Nexus demo was flawless. Dr. Sharma was incredibly supportive, guiding me through the intricacies of venture capital pitches. She told me to focus on the problem Nexus solved, the market size, and the team I had assembled, however small. She also told me to be authentic, to let my passion for the project shine through. The day of the pitch arrived. I showed up at a sleek modern office building downtown, a place far grander than anything Vertex Innovations had. Conference room was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 6 investors sat around a polished mahogany table. They looked serious, intelligent, and intimidating. One face, in particular, caught my eye. An older man with piercing blue eyes and a calm, knowing expression. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place him. I took a deep breath and launched into my pitch. I spoke about the inefficiencies in current supply chains, the struggles of small businesses, and how Nexus could provide an affordable AI-driven solution. I showed them the demo explaining how the platform learned, adapted, and optimized in real time. I spoke about my vision for the future of logistics. I spoke with every ounce of passion and conviction I had. This wasn't just about money. It was about proving something to myself and to Sarah. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, the older man with the blue eyes, who I learned was Mr. Richard Vance, spoke. "Alex," he said, his voice calm and deliberate. "That was an impressive presentation. Your understanding of the market is keen, and the technology, while still nascent, shows exceptional promise." The other investors nodded, asked pointed questions, and I answered them all confidently. Honestly, Dr. Sharma occasionally chimed in, reinforcing my points. The meeting lasted for nearly 2 hours. By the end, I felt drained but cautiously optimistic. "We will be in touch," Mr. Vance concluded, offering a small, enigmatic smile. I left the meeting feeling a strange mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. I had given it my all. Now all I could do was wait. The next day, Dr. Sharma called me. "Alex," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. "They're in. And not just that. Mr. Vance was particularly impressed. He's offered a lead investment, a significant sum, enough to fully develop Nexus and bring it to market within a year." I couldn't believe it. A lead investment. This was more than I had dared to hope for. "That's incredible, Anya. Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me, Alex. Thank your talent and your hard work," she replied. "But here is something else. Mr. Vance has a proposition for you. A unique opportunity." My heart pounded. "What kind of opportunity?" "He wants you to consider taking on a more direct executive role. He's restructuring a portfolio company that recently underwent a major acquisition. He believes your vision, your leadership, and your understanding of modern tech are exactly what this company needs right now." I frowned. "A portfolio company? What kind of company?" "It's in the software sector," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "A company called Vertex Innovations." The air left my lungs in a whoosh. Vertex. My old company. The one that had fired me. The one where Sarah Miller had laughed in my face. My mind reeled. Vertex Innovations? But how? Dr. Sharma explained. Mr. Vance's Consortium Global Investments Group had just completed a hostile takeover of Vertex's parent company, effectively acquiring Vertex Innovations as part of the deal. They were deeply unhappy with Vertex's recent performance, its outdated strategies, and its complacent leadership. They saw it as a goldmine of potential, but one that needed a complete overhaul. Mr. Vance was looking for someone with fresh ideas, someone who understood the tech, but also someone who could shake things up, she explained. He'd been quietly observing Vertex for a while. He even mentioned knowing some of their internal struggles. When he saw your pitch for Nexus, he saw more than just a founder. He saw a CEO. I remembered Mr. Vance's face from the meeting. That vague familiarity. I had seen him once years ago at a major industry conference. He was a legend, a titan of industry, and he had been quietly eyeing Vertex. My firing, my struggle, had been a blip on his radar. A conveniently timed opening. "He wants to put you in charge, Alex," Dr. Sharma said. "To clean house, to modernize, to bring Vertex back from the brink. And he's willing to fund Nexus separately, to let you develop it on the side under the new Vertex umbrella, seeing it as a potential future integration or a new business line." The irony was crushing. Fired one day, offered the CEO position the next. At the very company that had discarded me, the company where Sarah still worked. A slow, cold realization dawned on me. This wasn't just an opportunity. it was destiny. A chance to not just get back on my feet, but to stand taller than I ever had before, and to face the people who had celebrated my downfall, not as a victim, but as their leader. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Shock, vindication, a fierce surge of determination, and a chilling sense of poetic justice. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady, resolute. "Tell Mr. Vance I accept." The game was on, and I had a very specific player in mind for my first move. The acceptance of the CEO position set off a whirlwind. Mr. Vance himself called me later that day. His voice was calm, authoritative, but with a surprising hint of warmth. He reiterated his faith in me, explained the challenges at Vertex, and laid out his expectations. He wanted a complete cultural shift, a focus on innovation, and a ruthless pursuit of efficiency. He also made it clear that while Nexus was a promising venture, my immediate priority was Vertex. "Alex," he said, "I understand the personal history you have with Vertex. I won't tell you how to run your company, but I will advise you to lead with a clear head. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but leadership requires a warm heart and a clear vision. Use your past experience there as knowledge, not as fuel for vindictiveness. Vertex needs saving, not punishing." His words resonated. He was right. While the idea of facing Sarah, of seeing her reaction, was a powerful motivator, it couldn't be my only one. Yacht was a big company, with hundreds of employees whose livelihoods depended on it. I had to focus on the mission. Still, a quiet part of me allowed for a little bit of delicious anticipation. Over the next few days, I was bombarded with information. Financial reports, organizational charts, strategic plans. I spent hours dissecting Vertex's strengths and weaknesses. It was worse than I thought. The company was bloated, inefficient, and resistant to change. Many of the departments, especially marketing, were spending wildly without clear ROI. My old department, project management, was being stifled by outdated processes. I began to formulate my initial strategy. First, a thorough assessment of all departments. Second, a focus on rebuilding morale and trust, which I knew would be a massive challenge after years of poor leadership and recent layoffs. Third, a bold new product roadmap, leveraging some of the core technologies Vertex already had, but with a fresh approach. And yes, a hard look at the dead weight, both in terms of processes and personnel. My initial team would be small, hand-picked. Dr. Sharma would serve as an advisor, helping me navigate the investor landscape. Mr. Vance assigned me a seasoned COO, a no-nonsense woman named Evelyn Reed, who specialized in corporate turnarounds. She was direct, intelligent, and didn't suffer fools gladly. Perfect. I wanted to keep my identity as the new CEO a complete secret from Vertex employees until the official announcement. Mr. Vance agreed. It would allow for a cleaner, more impactful reveal. I knew the news would shock. They expected some corporate raider from New York, not a guy who was fired just days ago. As I studied the organizational charts, I found Sarah Miller, Sarah Senior Marketing Manager. Her team was significantly larger than it needed to be, and her department's budget was astronomical compared to its actual output. A small, cold smile touched my lips. "Oh, Sarah, we were going to have a very interesting conversation." Evelyn was already working on a transition plan, setting up meetings with key department heads, but without revealing who the new CEO was. We planned the announcement for the upcoming Monday, precisely 1 week after I had been fired. Poetic indeed. I spent hours walking through the building layout, imagining myself moving through the halls, no longer as the ostracized former employee, but as the person in charge. I thought about the fear I'd felt walking out, the shame, the anger, and now, the strange, quiet power that settled over me. It was intoxicating, but also heavy. I had a lot to prove. Not just to the investors, but to myself. And to everyone who had ever doubted me. My focus wasn't just on Sarah. I needed to address the root causes of Vertex's decline. That meant scrutinizing Mr. Harrison, the head of operations, and Miss Jenkins from HR, who had delivered my termination with such cold precision. They were part of the old guard, part of the problem. They had to go. But it wouldn't be a personal vendetta. It would be a business decision, a necessary culling to save the company. That's what I told myself. I knew the initial reaction from the employees would be shock, confusion, and possibly resentment. Some would see me as an outsider, despite my past history with the company. Others would recognize me and wonder what on earth was happening. It was going to be a turbulent transition, but I was ready. On Sunday night, I laid out my best suit, the one I used to wear for major client presentations. It felt different now. Not just a uniform for a job, but the armor for a battle. I thought about Sarah. I pictured her face when she saw me walk in. Would she turn pale? Would she try to hide? Or would she try to put on a brave face? Part of me wanted her to be terrified. Another part wanted to see if she had any capacity for shame. I closed my eyes. The sound of her cackle still echoed in the quiet corners of my mind. It was a powerful motivator, a constant reminder of what had driven me to this point. I wasn't just walking into an old office. I was walking into a new chapter, and I was going to write it on my own terms. The next day, I would walk in as her new CEO, and the show would begin. Monday morning dawned, crisp and clear. I arrived at the Vertex Innovations building, precisely at 8:45 a.m., just as the first wave of employees was pouring in. It felt surreal walking through the lobby I had exited in disgrace just 1 week prior. This time, I wasn't carrying a cardboard box. I was carrying a heavy briefcase and a weight of purpose. Security waved me through without a second glance. Mr. Vance had already handled all the necessary internal arrangements. My new access badge, still pristine, opened doors I used to only dream of accessing. I walked directly to the executive floor, a place I had only ever visited for very formal meetings. Evelyn Reed, my new COO, was already waiting for me outside the large glass-walled conference room. She gave me a firm nod. "Ready, Alex? The executive team is already inside. We've got HR, finance, operations, marketing, and a few others." "As ready as I'll ever be, Evelyn," I replied, a nervous flutter in my stomach. She pushed open the door. The room was buzzing with low conversations. About 15 people sat around the long conference table, some looking bored, some curious. And there, near the end of the table, sat Sarah Miller. She was chatting animatedly with someone, her red hair catching alight. She looked completely oblivious, completely at ease. Then she looked up. Her eyes met mine. For a split second, a flicker of recognition, then confusion. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowed, trying to place me. Did she think I was a new vendor, a delivery guy? Then the confusion turned to shock. Her mouth opened slightly, the color drained from her face. I walked to the head of the table, my gaze unwavering. Mr. Harrison, the head of operations, was there too. He saw me and his eyebrows shot up. Miss Jenkins from HR, her face still as impassive as ever, also registered a flicker of surprise. No one said a word. The entire room went silent. You could feel the sudden tension in the air. Evelyn stepped forward. "Good morning, everyone," she announced, her voice clear and strong. "Thank you for coming." As you know, Global Investments Group has completed its acquisition of Vertex. This marks a new chapter for the company. We have a new vision, new strategies, and new leadership to usher us into this exciting future. She paused, then gestured to me. I'd like to introduce Alex Miller. He will be your new Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. A collective gasp went through the room. Whispers erupted, then died down just as quickly. All eyes were on me. The man they had fired just a week ago. Sarah's face was a mask of absolute horror. Her eyes were wide, darting from me to Evelyn, then back to me again, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing, what she was seeing. Her jaw hung slightly open. It was a perfect picture of disbelief, terror, and dawning realization. Triumph in her eyes from last week had been utterly replaced by raw fear. Mr. Harrison's face had gone pale too. He coughed, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Miss Jenkins simply stared, her expression finally breaking from its usual neutrality into something that looked like utter bewilderment. I took my place at the head of the table. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice calm and steady, betraying none of the chaos swirling inside me. My gaze swept over the room, resting on Sarah for a beat longer than necessary. "My name is Alex. As Evelyn just announced, I am your new CEO. Some of you might remember me. I used to be the senior project manager here." A few people shifted uncomfortably. I continued. "I know this is a surprise, a significant one, and I understand you may have questions or even concerns. But let me assure you of one thing. I am here because I believe in Vertex. I believe in its potential, and I believe in many of its people." I looked directly at Mr. Harrison and Miss Jenkins. "However, the company has been stagnant. We've lost our way. We've become complacent. That ends today. We will be undergoing a comprehensive restructuring. There will be changes, significant ones." I then turned to Evelyn. "Evelyn, if you'd be so kind as to escort Mr. Harrison and Miss Jenkins out. Their services are no longer required. We thank them for their past contributions." Mr. Harrison's face crumpled. "Alex, what are you talking about?" he spluttered, half rising from his chair. Miss Jenkins, for the first time, looked truly flustered. "This is highly irregular." "No, Miss Jenkins," I said, my voice firm. "What was irregular was how this company was run. What was irregular was firing dedicated employees without cause. This," I gestured around the room, "is a necessary step towards a healthier future for Vertex. Evelyn, if you please." Evelyn, without a word, moved towards them. Mr. Harrison and Miss Jenkins, defeated, gathered their things and followed her out, their faces a picture of shock and humiliation. The room remained silent. The message was clear. This was a new era. And I was not here to play games. Then I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were still wide, fixed on me. Her lips were trembling slightly. She tried to say something, but no sound came out. The laughter she had unleashed last week, so full of venomous joy, was now trapped in her throat, replaced by a suffocating fear. The silence in the room was thick, heavy. This was my moment. This was the reveal. And it felt both powerful and chillingly satisfying. The moment Mr. Harrison and Miss Jenkins were escorted out, the silence in the room became even heavier, charged with tension. No one dared to speak. Their departure was a clear signal. This was not just a new CEO. This was a revolution. I let the silence hang for a few more seconds, allowing the message to sink in. Then I addressed the remaining executives. "Now that we've cleared the air," I said, my voice steady, Let's talk about the future of Vertex. I've spent the past week analyzing our operations. We have serious challenges ahead, but we also have immense potential. I launched into my initial vision for the company, outlining a leaner, more innovative approach. I spoke about empowering teams, investing in new technologies, and putting our customers first. My words were carefully chosen, focusing on business goals. But the underlying message was clear. The old ways were over. Throughout the meeting, I kept an eye on Sarah. She sat motionless, her face pale, her eyes darting between me and the notes she pretended to take. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions. Her usual confident demeanor had completely evaporated. She was a shadow of her former self, and the sight was both gratifying and slightly unsettling. After the meeting, Evelyn and I immediately began to implement the first phase of the restructuring. We had one-on-one meetings with every department head. The mood in the building was a mix of apprehension and cautious optimism. Some employees, especially those who had worked closely with me before, sought me out, offering timid congratulations, a clear sense of relief in their eyes. They had seen the company's decline too. Sarah was scheduled for her meeting on the second day. Her assistant, a young woman named Chloe who always seemed intimidated by Sarah, came to my office door looking visibly nervous. "Miss Miller is here for her meeting, Mr. Alex," she mumbled. "Send her in, Chloe," I said, my voice neutral. Sarah walked in, not with her usual swagger, but with slow, deliberate steps. She was dressed impeccably as always, but her eyes were still wide, a haunted look about. She sat across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Good morning, Sarah," I began, my tone purely professional. "Thank you for coming." She nodded, unable to meet my gaze directly. "Mr. Alex," she finally managed, her voice a whisper. "Let's be clear, Sarah," I said, leaning forward slightly. "I am not here for a personal vendetta. I am here to fix Vertex. And that means evaluating every department, every role, for its contribution to the company's success." Her head snapped up, her eyes suddenly filled with a mix of fear and defiance. "My department contributes a great deal. We've managed all the marketing campaigns, the branding. And yet," I interrupted, "our market share has been steadily declining. Our brand perception is stale, and your department's budget has been disproportionately high compared to its impact." I pulled up a series of charts on my monitor. "These are the numbers, Sarah. They don't lie. Your team is overstaffed and underperforming." She stared at the screen, then back at me. But Mr. Harrison approved all of this. He always said my department was essential." "Mr. Harrison is no longer with the company," I stated calmly, "and his decisions are no longer relevant. My focus is on results. Your department as it stands is not delivering them." I paused, letting the words sink in. "Here is what's going to happen. We're going to significantly reduce your department's budget, consolidate teams, and streamline processes. This will require layoffs, Sarah. Significant ones." Her eyes widened further. "Layoffs? But my team, they're good people. Are they, Sarah? Or are they just part of a system that encouraged complacency and inflated egos, rather than true innovation and measurable results?" My voice was still calm, but there was an edge to it now. The team that was focused on taking credit, rather than building something substantial. She flinched. The veiled reference to our past clashes was clear. She knew I knew. "You will be responsible for leading this restructuring within marketing," I continued. "You will identify key talent and critical roles. Anyone not contributing directly to a lean, effective, and results-driven marketing strategy will be let go." She looked horrified. "You want me to fire my own team?" I want you to make the difficult decisions required to save this company, Sarah, I said, my gaze unwavering, and to prove that you are capable of leading a department that actually delivers value. If you can't do that, then your position here will also become redundant. I had decided against immediately firing her. Not out of kindness, but out of a calculated move, forcing her to confront the consequences of the old system, to be the one to dismantle her bloated department, felt like a more potent form of poetic justice. It was a test. And a punishment. She swallowed hard, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. But I offered no comfort, no sympathy. The memory of her cackle, the raw joy in her face, was too fresh. This wasn't about vengeance, I told myself. It was about business, but a part of me knew. It was also about showing her the true cost of her actions. She would learn the meaning of corporate pain, not just inflict. You have 1 week to present a detailed plan, I concluded, handing her a folder with a new set of financial targets. I expect a clear strategy for a revitalized, efficient marketing department. Failure to deliver will result in the immediate termination of your employment. She stood up. Slowly, her shoulders slumped. Yes, Mr. Alex, she murmured, her voice barely audible. She turned and walked out, a broken figure. The sight was not as satisfying as I had imagined. It was cold, empty, but the job had to be done. And this was just the beginning. The following week was a whirlwind of tough decisions. Layoffs were announced across various departments, not just marketing. The mood in the office shifted from cautious optimism to a somber, fearful quiet. People walked with their heads down, whispers replacing the usual office chatter. I held town hall meetings, explaining the necessity of these changes, promising a leaner, stronger Vertex. But promises felt thin in the face of so much pain. My initial gratification at Sarah's humiliation began to curdle. It wasn't just her. It was the good people, the ones who had worked hard, who were caught in the crossfire of the company's past mismanagement. I saw the fear in their eyes, the worry for their families. It was heartbreaking. I was saving the company, but at a significant human cost. Then came Sarah's presentation. She walked into my office a week later, looking even more drained. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot. She placed a thin folder on my desk. My plan, Mr. Alex, she said, her voice flat. I opened it. It was a brutally efficient proposal, a 40% reduction in staff, a complete overhaul of existing marketing campaign, a shift to data-driven strategies I had advocated for years ago, only to be dismissed by Mr. Harrison and, by extension, by Sarah. She had laid out a clear path to efficiency, a brutal one. This is thorough, Sarah, I said, genuinely surprised by the ruthlessness of her plan. It's exactly what's needed. She looked at me, her eyes hollow. It was the only way, wasn't it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. To keep my job. I leaned back in my chair. It was the only way to save your department, Sarah. And to prove you are capable of leadership, beyond just taking credit for others' work. She flinched at the subtle jab, but didn't argue. Instead, her voice cracked. I fired Mark yesterday. The HR junior, he has a new baby. He begged me, he said he didn't know what he'd do. My stomach tightened, Mark. The awkward young man who had escorted me out just a week and a half ago. The one who had looked so uncomfortable. He was just a kid trying to make a living. And now he was jobless because of the very system I was trying to dismantle. A system she had benefited from, and now, ironically, was tasked with destroying. I didn't realize until I had to tell them, she continued, her voice catching, what it felt like to be on the other side, to be the one delivering the news, to see that look in their eyes. The fear. The despair. She looked up, her eyes finally meeting mine, and I saw real tears welling up. It's awful, Alex. It's truly awful. Her use of my first name was a stark shift. Her carefully constructed facade had crumbled. For the first time, I saw not the callous, laughing Sarah, but a woman who was clearly suffering. She was confronting the real human impact of corporate decisions, the kind she had probably never considered when she was comfortable in her inflated role. "I hated you for a long time, Alex," she admitted, her voice raw. "I was jealous. You were always so good at your job, so respected, and I felt like I had to fight to get noticed. Mr. Harrison, he encouraged it. He fostered this toxic environment where we were all competing, not collaborating. He told me you were an impediment to his vision. He used me, and then he used you. And when you were fired, I saw an opportunity, a chance to solidify my position. I didn't think about you as a person, just as a problem solved." She wiped a tear from her cheek, but seeing Mark's face yesterday and all the others, it just hit me. This isn't a game. These are people's lives, and I was so blind, so utterly blind. Her confession hung in the air. The vindication I had felt slowly drained away, replaced by a strange, heavy empathy. Her laughter had been a cruel act, yes. But it was also born from a toxic environment, from a place of insecurity, fueled by a manipulative boss. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it explained it. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, Alex," she said, her voice filled with self-loathing. "I know I don't deserve it. I needed to say it, and I needed you to know that I understand now. What it feels like to be on the other side of that desk. It's heartbreaking." The anger, the desire for revenge had dissipated. In its place, a profound sadness. This wasn't the triumphant moment I'd envisioned. It was messy, it was human, and it was deeply, truly heartbreaking. Not just for Mark, or for the others, but for Sarah too. She was being forced to confront her own complicity, her own moral failings, and that in itself was a painful punishment. I saw her not as an enemy, but as another victim of the system I was now tasked with fixing. The weight of leadership settled on me, heavier than ever. The confession from Sarah left me reeling. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I'd anticipated. There was no fire, no anger, just raw, vulnerable honesty. Her words about Mr. Harrison, about being used, about seeing Mark's face, echoed in my mind. It didn't erase the sting of her laughter, but it complicated it. I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time in years. The slick, confident veneer was gone. What remained was a tired, frightened woman, burdened by the consequences of her choices. My chest ached with a strange mix of emotions. Pity, perhaps, and a profound weariness. Sarah, I said, my voice softer than I intended, your plan is approved. You will implement it. But I want you to understand something. This isn't just about saving your job. It's about rebuilding this company. And it's about doing it with integrity. You will lead these changes and you will do it professionally. No more games, no more backstabbing. We are a team now, or we fail together. She nodded slowly, still tearful. Understood, Mr. Alex. And Sarah, I continued. Don't call me Mr. Alex. My name is Alex. She looked up, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Alex, she repeated almost tentatively. Yes, Alex. We are working together, and we need to be transparent. This company needs a fresh start, and that includes how we treat each other. I leaned forward. What you did was cruel, Sarah. It hurt, but the environment here enabled it, and now we have a chance to change that. I am giving you that chance. Don't waste it. She nodded again, more firmly this time. I won't. Thank you, Alex. She left my office no longer a broken figure, but a humbled one. I watched her go, feeling drained. The revenge I had craved felt hollow. Seeing her genuine pain, her genuine regret, was far more impactful than any personal victory could have been. It highlighted the systemic issues within Vertex that had created a culture where such cruelty could thrive. Over the next few months, the changes at Vertex were profound. My core team, including Evelyn, and now a cautiously cooperative Sarah, worked tirelessly. We restructured departments, implemented new technologies, and, most importantly, changed the internal culture. I made it a point to be visible, to speak directly with employees, to foster an environment of open communication and collaboration. The whispers slowly faded, replaced by a sense of shared purpose. Sarah, to her credit, became a different person. She immersed herself in her work, proving herself to be incredibly intelligent and capable when her energies were focused on constructive goals rather than internal politics. She was still direct, but now it was for clarity, not aggression. She handled the layoffs in her department with a quiet dignity, offering support to those leaving, helping them connect with recruiters. She even set up an internal mentorship program for junior staff, something the old Vertex would never have considered. Our professional relationship grew from one of wary truce to cautious respect. We had difficult conversations about past projects, about mistakes made. She never fully apologized for her laughter, but her actions, her changed demeanor, spoke louder than any words. She actively fought against the toxic behaviors that had once defined her. One afternoon, months later, I found myself in the break room, grabbing a coffee. Sarah was there, warming up her lunch. We were alone. The conversation was easy now, about a new campaign launch. As she turned to leave, she paused. Alex, she said, her voice soft, I heard from Mark, the HR junior. He found a new job. A good one. He wanted me to tell you he's doing well. My heart felt a pang. That's good to hear, Sarah, I replied, a genuine smile forming. I was worried about him. She nodded. Me too. I still think about that day a lot, and what I said to you. Her gaze was direct, earnest. I am truly sorry, Alex, for all of it. For how I treated you, for laughing. The words, finally spoken, felt like a weight lifting. Not just from me, but from her too. I know, Sarah, I said, my voice gentle. I understand, and I appreciate you saying that. She offered a small, sad smile. It changed me, this whole thing. It was a hard lesson, but maybe a necessary one. For all of us, I agreed. It wasn't a grand, cinematic reconciliation. It was quiet, understated, and profoundly human. The heartbreaking part wasn't just my pain, or even Sarah's. It was the realization that an entire company, filled with good people, could be warped by bad leadership, by fear, by an unchecked culture of competition, and that changing it required breaking some things, and some people before they could be rebuilt. It was a heavy truth. A year passed since I walked back into Vertex Innovations as its CEO. The building itself felt different. The stale, oppressive atmosphere had lifted. Walls were knocked down, literally and figuratively. Earned workspaces replaced cubicle farms, fostering collaboration. New art adorned the halls, reflecting a vibrant, modern energy. The once silent break rooms now buzzed with lively chatter and laughter. Real laughter, the kind that came from joy, not malice. Vertex was thriving. We had launched 2 major new products, leveraging some of the core technologies I had seen potential in during my project manager day. Nexus, my passion project, was now a standalone division within Vertex, growing rapidly and even attracting its own major clients. We were no longer just a consumer app company. We were a tech innovator. The financial reports were strong. Profits were up. Market share was climbing, and employee retention had skyrocketed. We had weathered the storm of layoffs and restructuring, emerging stronger and more unified. My leadership style had evolved too. I was still direct, still demanding of results, but I led with a newfound empathy. I remembered the fear I had felt on the sidewalk, the humiliation, the financial dread. I remembered Sarah's raw confession, her brokenness. These experiences shaped my decisions, making me more aware of the human impact of every strategic move. Sarah was still with us, and she was thriving. She was now the head of marketing, a leaner, more effective department that was truly integrated with product development. She had grown immensely, not just professionally, but personally. She was a fierce advocate for her team, and her creative campaigns were genuinely impactful. We had built a strong, respectful working relationship. The ghost of her laughter still lingered in the back of my mind sometimes, a faint echo, but it no longer held any power over me. It was a reminder, a lesson learned. Mr. Vance would often visit, his piercing blue eyes observing everything. He rarely offered praise, but his nods and occasional quiet smiles spoke volumes. "You've done well, Alex," he said to me one afternoon, looking out over the bustling office from my glass-walled office. "You didn't just save a company, you resurrected its soul." I thought about Mr. Harrison and Miss Jenkins. I heard they had struggled to find new positions in the industry, their reputations tarnished by the fallout from the acquisition. There was no joy in that knowledge, just a sense of natural consequence. They had created the environment that nearly destroyed Vertex, and in the end, it had consumed them too. My personal life had also found its balance. I was no longer chained to work, though I still poured my passion into it. Mike was immensely proud, constantly ribbing me about my Cinderella story. My mom was ecstatic, relieved and happy to see me not just back on my feet, but flying. Sometimes I would walk through the office, observing the teens, seeing the laughter, the camaraderie, the focused energy. I would see familiar faces, some of whom had been there that day I was fired, some who had been laid off and later rehired as the company grew again. And I would see new faces brimming with potential and excitement. The journey had been arduous. It had tested me, pushed me to my limits, and forced me to confront my own desires for retribution. But the true victory wasn't about revenge. It was about rebuilding. It was about taking a place that had been defined by negativity and turning it into a beacon of innovation and positive culture. The memory of Sarah's cackle, so sharp and cruel, had once been the fuel for my darkest desires. Now it was just a faint, distant sound, a reminder of where I had been and how far I had come. It was a testament to the fact that even from the ashes of betrayal and humiliation, something profoundly good could rise. My new beginning wasn't just about a job. It was about a life rebuilt, a lesson learned, and a future forged, not in bitterness, but in the enduring power of resilience and a touch of surprising forgiveness.